Nyalche Chembo Toto Ningmi Shang, Donen Manam Chembo, Nyalcheta, Lankara Dargam Santo, Shermat, Tumba Tuche Chanla Kishom Sar, Nishan Roar Zer Nishan Kamsa, Jawar Tuji Shan, Yelaman, Jime Panzo Jala, Soran, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo, Gonjo Toban Pora Shinjilo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching.
Today we will teach the Shurangama Sutra. There is no class tomorrow. Next week will be the same as before. If there are no special circumstances, we will still have class. If something special comes up, we will notify you separately. The first 3 sessions are on the wish-fulfilling treasury. The last 3 sessions will still be on the Shurangama Sutra. What we are teaching today is this Shurangama Sutra. Now, within this Shurangama Sutra, as everyone should already know from before, currently it is Venerable Purna Maitreyan Putra who has raised several questions to the Buddha, approximately 5 or 6 questions. Today, the Buddha said to Venerable Purna Maitreyan Putra, "Listen carefully, and I will explain this to you." After saying this, Venerable Purna Maitreyan Putra very respectfully listened in silence, accepting in silence. Then below, the Buddha tells the answers to these earlier questions in the Shurangama Sutra. The content we are teaching today may be somewhat difficult to understand, but it is very important. We all know that the Shurangama Sutra is generally a sutra of the exoteric teachings. However, among the exoteric sutras, it expounds some profound principles found in the Dzogchen of the secret mantra. This includes what we often see, the omniscient Mipham Rinpoche and the omniscient Longchenpa explaining the meaning of the 17 tantras. At such times, we often see them say that from the primordial ground, the ground manifestations appear. When these ground manifestations appear, if one recognizes one's original face, like Samantabhadra, one attains awakening right there in the primordial state. If one does not recognize it, when confusion arises from the primordial ground, this is called co-emergent ignorance. One does not recognize one's own essence. When one then grasps at external appearances, this is called conceptually imputed ignorance. In this way, one wanders throughout the entire cycle of samsara. Not recognizing one's original face is called ignorance of same identity. This is how it is explained in the Tantras. Once these 3 types of ignorance arise, one then continues within samsara, spinning and wandering endlessly. This process is explained quite clearly. We often speak of the primordial ground and its manifestations. What is the difference between samsara and nirvana? Actually, in the Tantras, there are theoretical explanations as well as oral teachings, and there are pith instructions as well as direct pointing out. These can still be found in these sutras. Therefore, after studying the Shurangama Sutra, we can further develop unwavering faith in the principles of the unsurpassed secret mantra. As for how exactly this is so, everyone can also, through the words, come to understand the profound meaning within. Now, because we mentioned earlier, if all phenomena such as earth, water, fire, and wind are all within the essence of Tathagatagarbha, pure in its original nature, why do mountains, rivers, and the great earth suddenly arise, the worlds of environment and beings, both pure and impure phenomena? That was the question asked at that time. Below, the Buddha answers him in this way. The Buddha said, "Purna, as you have said, if all is pure in its original nature, why do mountains, rivers, and the great earth suddenly arise?" The Buddha told Venerable Purna Maitreyan Putra, "Indeed, as you said earlier, 2 main questions were raised. The latter question also extended into some smaller questions. What is being said in this question is, if all phenomena are ultimately pure in their original nature, why do they suddenly arise? The external mountains, rivers, and great earth, and the internal world of sentient beings, and all these various adornments and various appearances, why is this so?" This passage actually says, "Have you not constantly heard the Tathagata proclaim that the nature of awareness is wondrously luminous, and that primordial awareness is luminous and wondrous. The Buddha told Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra, the question you just asked is actually quite simple. Have you not constantly heard? Heard what? What the Tathagata has proclaimed. The nature of awareness is wondrously luminous, and primordial awareness is luminous and wondrous. The Tathagata should be in various definitive Mahayana sutras constantly proclaiming the nature of awareness is wondrously luminous. Originally, from the very beginning, our primordial nature of awareness is wondrously luminous, or the luminosity of awareness. As for primordial awareness is luminous and wondrous. Upon this original primordial nature, one awakens once again. This is called primordial awareness is luminous and wondrous. It can also be expressed as luminous and wondrous. Here, for the sake of more balanced wording, perhaps it is not repeated. It may be like this. However, when translated into Tibetan, both are rendered as the luminosity of awareness and the luminosity of primordial awareness. Essentially, luminosity is used to represent both. They are not separated into two distinct terms. The Buddha told Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra, the question you raised just now, have you not constantly heard the Buddha expounding in various sutras the principle of primordial awareness being wondrously luminous, or the nature of awareness being wondrously luminous? Have you not constantly heard this? The Buddha did not yet explain what exactly primordial awareness being wondrously luminous and the nature of awareness being wondrously luminous actually mean. He did not say yet. First he posed a question to him. You should have constantly heard the Buddha in various sutras explaining this principle, right? At that time, Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra replied, yes, indeed, world-honored one, I have constantly heard the Buddha proclaim this meaning. At that time, Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra also said, indeed, world-honored one, it is so. I have constantly heard about primordial awareness being wondrously luminous. This includes what is mentioned in some commentaries. Although Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra constantly heard this, what he heard was merely the words. He had not truly realized the principle of primordial awareness being wondrously luminous, or primordial awareness being luminous and wondrous. He still had not truly heard it, only on the literal level. Perhaps we are also like this. Some of us have come to Larung Gar for 10, 20, or even 30 years already. We constantly hear terms like primordially pure and spontaneously present luminosity. These words, we constantly hear them, yes, but whether we ourselves have this kind of realization, whether we have this kind of awakening, that is hard to say. For some people, it is truly uncertain whether they will even have the opportunity to awaken in this lifetime. Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra, on the surface, had indeed constantly heard in the presence of the world-honored one what was just mentioned, whether it is the luminosity of awareness or the luminosity of our original nature. Here, wondrously luminous and wondrous actually refer to the primordial awareness of our mind's nature, clear and vivid. This is what he constantly heard. Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra had already agreed. He also acknowledged, yes, I have heard this. Indeed, in terms of the words and phrases, these words of the Buddha he had heard. We have also heard them. We too have heard the luminosity of awareness, the naked awareness. From the perspective of the secret mantra and from the exoteric teachings, the original face of Tathagata Garbha, the inseparability of appearance and emptiness, or the nature that is vividly clear and aware, recognizing mind and seeing its nature, awakening in this very moment. These beautiful sounding words, we have also heard them, and many people long for this. Can it be that just as the words describe at a certain moment, I will suddenly awaken? When I awaken, all afflictions will be shattered, all suffering will completely vanish. Many people admire and long for this. Even in dreams they feel, oh, in my dream it seemed like I truly awakened. They awakened in the dream, but when they woke up they still had not awakened. And then they cry. There are cases like this too. Venerable Purna Maitreya Putra had also also heard about this wondrous luminosity. Now below the analysis begins. Since you have heard about this wondrous luminosity, what exactly is it like? The Buddha began to question him. When you speak of awareness being luminous, is it that the nature itself is luminous and therefore called awareness? Or is it that awareness is not luminous and therefore called luminous awareness? You see, awareness being luminous, luminous awareness, reversed this way and that way. One may not understand why they are reversed. It is called awareness being luminous. Is it that the nature itself is luminous and therefore called awareness? Or is it that awareness is not luminous and therefore called luminous awareness? Here there are many instances of luminous and many instances of awareness. So within this short passage, if someone has never studied the Dharma, they probably would never understand it no matter what. If you have someone who has never studied the Dharma, read this for a long time, and you say, if you can understand this meaning, I will give you such and such reward, they still may not understand. What does awareness being luminous, luminous awareness, and non-awareness mean? What is the meaning? The Buddha told Venerable Purnamaitrayan Putra, did you not just say, what are the mountains, rivers, and great earth that you just mentioned? Yes. Was this not discussed earlier yesterday? The mind is originally luminous in its awareness. If this is the case with primordial awareness, and as was also said earlier, if primordial awareness pervades everything, or if primordial awareness is pure in its original nature, and so on, then this luminous awareness you speak of, does it originally exist or does it not exist? Through questioning in this way, he begins to guide him. Then he said, when you speak of awareness being luminous, is it that the nature itself is luminous, this so-called awareness being luminous that you mention? Is its nature itself luminous and therefore called awareness? This luminous awareness, is your mind's nature forever in the manner of an unconditioned phenomenon, always this luminous nature and therefore called awareness? Or is it that awareness is not originally luminous, originally not luminous? Your awareness nature is originally not luminous, and later, through subsequent practice or study, gradually, slowly, you began to understand. Originally it was not luminous, and only later became luminous. Is the luminosity you speak of inherently luminous in its awareness, or was it originally not luminous in its awareness, and only after practice, after this luminosity was taught, did it begin to become luminous awareness? What exactly is the luminous awareness you speak of? Now, Venerable Purnamaitrayan Putra is being pressed again. What exactly is this luminous awareness? Because as everyone knows, what we call luminous or dark here, much of this is at the conventional level, at the level of conceptual thought. These are certainly not the ultimate. The so-called luminous, the so-called non-existence, it is not like that. Generally speaking, practitioners of the Shravaka vehicle tend to focus on and cling to the literal level or to characteristics. This is all the great masters of the past have said this, and anyone with some degree of insight would say the same. So the key point, the question for the other party, is this luminosity you speak of, does it have characteristics or not? That is the meaning. Then Venerable Purnamaitrayan Putra said, if this is not luminous and it is called awareness, then there would be nothing to illuminate. If this was not luminous before, then this so-called awareness, otherwise there would be nothing to illuminate, no way to become luminous. Because if it needs to become luminous first, and if it has always been luminous afterward, then subsequent practice would be useless. He believed that first it should be non-luminous. Sentient beings are in a state of confusion. Later, through direct pointing out, they come to know. Only then can it be so. If it were not like this, then there would be nothing to illuminate. Regarding luminous and non-luminous, first there is no luminosity, then there is luminosity. Once there is luminosity, this is called awareness. Only then is it reasonable. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain clearly. So his position is this. Were there not two questions raised earlier? Is the nature always luminous? Or does it become luminous later through practice? Now, for us ordinary Shravaka practitioners, as everyone knows, before there was the essence of ignorance. Later, through study, through the truth of the path, and then after extinguishing afflictions, the truth of cessation is actualized. At that time it is the truth of suchness. Only at that time is there luminosity. Otherwise there would be nothing to illuminate. Only this way is reasonable. This is his view. Then the Buddha told Venerable Purna Maitreyan Putra, if there is nothing to illuminate, then there can be no luminous awareness. What he is saying here is, if in the beginning there is no luminosity, and only through practice does it later become luminous, then if there is nothing to illuminate, there cannot possibly be one who has luminous awareness. This is unreasonable. Originally, it was entirely non-luminous. If something originally non-luminous is made to become luminous, if the nature itself originally has no luminosity, then no matter what practice or effort is applied, this is impossible. If the essence of our mind in the beginning is not luminous, then no matter how diligently one practices afterward, it is like washing charcoal. It can never become white. Therefore, there cannot be no luminous awareness. There must be luminous awareness. If there is something to illuminate, if, as you said earlier, before there was no luminosity, but later some luminosity is added to it, if there is something to illuminate, if there is a subject and object, something added, something more given to it, and through practice it gradually becomes luminous, then its essence would be non-awareness. If there is something to illuminate, if a kind of luminosity needs to be added to it in order for it to manifest, then its essence is not the nature of awareness. It is non-awareness. If there is nothing to illuminate, if no so-called luminosity is added to it, then its nature is non-luminous. Its nature is certainly not luminous. Just like in our world, there are some things, and for example, like light bulbs, they are all fabricated afterward. But if they are fabricated afterward, actually their nature cannot be said to be luminous. If the nature is inherently complete, like a wish-fulfilling jewel or the sun and moon, these are originally complete in themselves. But if you believe that in the beginning it was not luminous, and only later became luminous, then if it only became luminous later, and it requires something to be added later, then its essence has no awareness, no luminosity. If there is no luminosity, then this is unreasonable. Without luminosity, it is not the clear and luminous nature of awareness. If you say its essence truly has no luminosity, if there is no luminosity, then because there is no luminosity, there cannot possibly be awakening, there cannot possibly be luminous awareness. There cannot possibly be luminous awareness, nor can there possibly be this pristine clarity, this pure luminous nature. It is impossible. Therefore, this is unreasonable. Then below it says here, through this method, the other party's view is refuted, saying that originally it was non-luminous and only later did it become luminous. Actually, many of us probably think this way. We think that our mind's nature is currently obscured by ignorance, not yet manifest. Then later, through awakening immediately, like turning on a light, we will see our true nature. Actually, this is from the perspective of our conceptual mind, we can say this. But in reality, originally, our mind's nature has always been luminous in nature. It is merely re-recognizing it. Other than this, there is no such thing as luminous and non-luminous. Otherwise, if originally it was non-luminous and only later became luminous, then the mind's nature would become a conditioned phenomenon. If it is a conditioned phenomenon, it is not permanent. But the true Buddha nature and the nature of Tathagata Garbha, it is eternal, unchanging. So in this regard, if one does not truly contemplate in this direction, there will be many contradictions. If you truly especially recognize even a little of the mind's nature, then the words may not express it very clearly, but the principle should be understood. The nature of awareness must be luminous. To fabricate luminous awareness is delusion. Your true nature of awareness must be luminous. The original face of sentient beings, Tathagata Garbha, it is luminous without needing to be fabricated. It does not need to become luminous through practice. If you later think that through adding something and then superimposing luminosity, this is not true luminous awareness. This is called deluded luminous awareness. To fabricate luminous awareness is delusion. Different commentaries explain this somewhat differently. It is said that awareness is originally luminous. If you add something more to it, then you lose the true luminosity. This is not explicit in the sutra text, losing this luminous awareness. But actually the meaning is, originally the nature of awareness must be luminous. But if you still think you need to add a kind of luminosity, this is called a deluded kind of luminous awareness. It is not true luminous awareness. This should be the meaning. Then continuing on, it seems that some great masters from the Han region have explained the following sections as, for example, the arising of the 3 subtle aspects and the 6 coarse aspects. The 3 subtle aspects are also called the 3 characteristics. Then later there should be 6 characteristics, the coarse ones. There is also this method of explanation. Of course, if we keep it simple, a literal explanation is also acceptable. Or, according to the masters from the Han region, especially like Master Uyi and certain others, they have their own way of explaining this. If explained this way, it is also fine. If we explain according to the 3 subtle aspects, or the 3 characteristics, the first is called the characteristic of karmic activity. Regarding the characteristic of karmic activity, here it says, awareness is not what is illuminated. Because of illuminating, an object is established. This awareness of ours, originally this luminosity of ours does not become luminous through subsequent practice. If it becomes luminous through subsequent practice, then it becomes deluded awareness. Because of this luminosity has already become establishing an object. The meaning of establishing an object is its luminous awareness. Originally, it is a kind of luminous awareness. If we subsequently fabricate it and then make it luminous, the relationship between them has already become that which illuminates and that which is illuminated. Then it becomes that which is illuminated. This is called the characteristic of karmic activity, the first one. Then the second is called the characteristic of transformation. How is the characteristic of transformation explained? It says, once the object is falsely established, your deluded subject arises. The meaning of this is, if your awareness has already become that which is illuminated, then in this case, this luminosity has already become a false imputation. If it is a false imputation, your deluded subject arises, then in this case, your apprehending subject, your wisdom, has already become a deluded arising. So as soon as there is an object in front, there will be a subject. If there is a subject, then this is a kind of delusion. Subject and object are mutually dependent. If they are mutually dependent, they are all delusion. This is called the characteristic of transformation. This is also the second subtle characteristic. Then the third is called the characteristic of manifestation. The characteristic of manifestation corresponds to what arises from the primordial ground. As I mentioned at the beginning, when the ground manifestations appear from the primordial ground, various characteristics arise. Originally, it is just this one essence, but within the essence, various differences suddenly manifest. So how is this explained? Starting from here, it is called the characteristic of manifestation. So how is the characteristic of manifestation explained? Within that which has neither sameness nor difference, difference blazingly arises. Originally, the dharmata of our essence has no various manifestations. It is like what we say in the secret mantra. When Buddha and sentient beings have not yet separated, it is equivalent to a neutral state. An inexpressible ground, this luminosity and emptiness, a manifestation that is non-dual and inseparable. Originally, it has no differentiation whatsoever. Within such an essence, difference blazingly arises. Because of the manifestation of ignorance, or the manifestation of various causes and conditions, here, blazingly, some commentaries explain it as suddenly. In Tibetan, it is also translated as suddenly or abruptly. Originally, it was like a single realm of luminosity. Just like at the beginning of the wish-fulfilling treasury, at the very start, how manifestations arise from the primordial ground, the state before the worlds of environment and beings had separated, it is like that state. So within this state of neither sameness nor difference, it suddenly transforms into all kinds of things, worlds, manifestations, various appearances. This is what we just discussed, the distinction between the three types of ignorance. Indeed, if you try to search for a root cause, there is nothing to find. Actually, in the exoteric teachings, it is also like this. You see, within that which has neither sameness nor difference, difference blazingly arises. This phrase is still very important, isn't it? From our primordial ground, manifestations appear. From the ground, the manifestations of sentient beings appear. This is quite clear. Then, differing from that which differs because of difference, sameness is established. As just mentioned, from the primordial ground, various worlds and various manifestations suddenly appear. Then, depending on these manifestations further give rise to various different appearances. For example, originally we have the outer world and the world of sentient beings. Then within the outer world and the world of sentient beings, the outer world also has various manifestations, all kinds of diverse forms or myriad differences, or various appearances of all shapes and colors. Then within the realm of sentient beings as well, from within differences, further differences arise. You see, for some of our family lineages, 2 or 3 brothers eventually branch into different lines, and then more differences, like branches of a tree. Eventually there are so many people. So from different phenomena, further different phenomena arise. Because of these differences, eventually a kind of commonality is also established. Although phenomena are all individually different, each one is different from another, but later they also all become the same. Regarding difference, generally here it refers to the various worlds. Phenomena that are mutually dependent are different. Regarding sameness, this includes space and the nature of mind. These are all the same. Sameness and difference become manifest. From this sameness and difference, what further arises? Because of this, there is further established neither sameness nor difference. Regarding neither sameness nor difference, in the end, this world manifests as having no sameness, nothing different, no separate entities. Does neither sameness nor difference refer to sentient beings? Sentient beings are without sameness. Without sameness means there is nothing the same about them, and without difference is likewise they are identical. What does this mean? Regarding without sameness, each sentient being, including their faculties, their appearance, or their preferences, these are all different. Sentient beings all have various differences, but they also have something without difference. Nothing that is different. There is a kind of sameness. What is the same? It is our mind's nature, Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature, pristine luminosity. These are all completely the same. So this world, from within neither sameness nor difference, difference blazingly arises, and then eventually all becomes neither sameness nor difference. The relationship between these, we might look at it and think sameness, difference. It seems rather complicated, strange, but actually if you truly contemplate it, the essence of sentient beings, their origin, manifests in this way. In the end, in this world, due to differences in causes and conditions, various things manifest. And within these various manifestations, there is also commonality. So it is the same for us humans. If we say humans are the same, they seem not to be the same. Each person's character, preferences, clothing, all are different, but if we say we are different, we still have something the same. At the very least, our Buddha nature is the same. Our original nature is the same. Luminosity is the same. Emptiness is the same. There is much that is the same. Such disturbance through mutual dependence gives rise to weariness. So with such manifestations, what was discussed above is that in Chan Buddhism, it is generally explained that the latter one is the characteristic of manifestation, the subtle one. So these are the 3 subtle aspects. Then below, the 6 coarse aspects are discussed, the 6 coarse phenomena. This is actually also about characteristics. In some commentaries, these are all separated and written as what? written as a chart. In the chart, the 3 subtle and 6 coarse aspects, along with some of the content here, are explained more clearly. But if not explained this way and explained simply, of course there are also ways to explain it. But sometimes we take this and especially connect it with principles from the Tantric teachings. When combined in this way, perhaps this sutra becomes easier to understand, especially for those of us who have studied a little of the Tantric teachings. The Shurangama Sutra may be easier to explain. If one has not studied the Tantric teachings, one might develop some doubts about certain principles, because the most fundamental point of these principles, the most fundamental point of luminosity and emptiness, can be found in the Tantric teachings. However, I feel that when I look at the great masters of ancient times, they were truly remarkable. Indeed, they understood the most profound meaning of the Shurangama Sutra. They still explained it very thoroughly, one can say that. It is just that when we read it now, some parts seem rather difficult to understand. When some explanations are given in vernacular language, there may be some slight discrepancies from the original text. Of course, this is also a normal phenomenon. After all, later teachers are in a relatively open state. But when composing treatises, it is very strict. So generally, when we give teachings, finding fault with them is relatively rare. But if someone composes a treatise, then it must be even more serious and strict. Now below, the 5th coarse phenomenon, the coarse characteristic, is discussed. What is this like? Here it says, such disturbance through mutual dependence gives rise to weariness. Such refers to what we discussed earlier about sameness and difference, manifesting from the original nature, and within that manifestation, the appearance of all kinds of worlds and things. The appearances of worlds and things are also sameness and difference. Actually, this kind of principle was often discussed by those who studied the Tao Te Ching in the past. The Tao gives birth to 1, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, 3 gives birth to the myriad things. In the end, 3 gives birth to the myriad things. So this is also related to what we are discussing here. The origin of everything is actually the Tao, and in the end, the myriad things arise. So what does this Tao refer to? Perhaps in the Tantric teachings, this is called the primordial ground, but what is being discussed here is the Dharmadhatu of neither sameness nor difference that was just mentioned. Actually, some great masters and ancient sages of the past, some of the principles they spoke of should also have places of great similarity with minor differences. Whether it is the so-called Tao or the ground spoken of in the Tantric teachings, or what is discussed here from within the state of neither sameness nor difference, various phenomena suddenly arise. The principle of difference blazingly arises mentioned earlier is also quite similar. So in this way, such disturbance, because from within such a primordial ground, various different appearances manifest. In this way, there begins to be ceaseless disturbance, and then weariness arises. Giving rise to weariness, generally among the 6 characteristics, this is called the characteristic of cognition, the cognition of wisdom. The meaning of giving rise to weariness is because originally wisdom is something permanent, but because, as mentioned earlier, various appearances keep arising, eventually various conceptual thoughts arise toward objects, and then one begins to become exhausted and weary within samsara. This is the first characteristic. The second characteristic is called the characteristic of continuity. The characteristic of continuity is described as weariness prolonged, giving rise to dust. Weariness prolonged is the characteristic of continuity, the second characteristic. Giving rise to dust is the characteristic of grasping, the third characteristic. So what is the meaning of weariness prolonged? The meaning of weariness prolonged is, when becoming exhausted in samsara like this, suffering and pleasure continuously manifest. This is weariness prolonged. We know that in samsara we have been weary for a very long time. Now I see that many people are very tired. Weariness prolonged. Right? Whether it is people who work, people who do volunteer work, people who memorize texts, people who take exams, People who do not take exams, they feel that life has no meaning. Some people worry about not doing well on exams and want to commit suicide. It is better not to do that. It is fine. Even if you do not pass, at most you get a 0. A 0 is called an egg. An egg with 2 chopsticks beside it is quite delicious. The other day, I ran into a teacher in the county town. He recognized me, and I also recognized him. It became quite awkward as he recalled the past, because back when we were in middle school, his teaching was not quite ideal, so our whole class went on strike. In the end, we vowed not to do well on the exam. The whole class got 0 on the history exam. Only one person, he is now over in Huoxi, he is now a Khenpo. At that time, he scored 3 points. So our whole class started to criticize him. We said we would make him wear a black hat, because that was the social situation at that time. A couple of days ago, when I was in Luhuo, that teacher happened to run into me. At first, as we both recalled, I pretended to have forgotten, and he did not say much either. But indeed, there is a not-so-good history there. This is called weariness prolonged, quite exhausting. Then giving rise to dust. This is called the characteristic of grasping, as just mentioned. The characteristic of grasping means because conceptual thoughts arise. When conceptual thoughts arise, one begins to grasp at characteristics. Then the 6 sense objects, form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, manifest externally. Then the specific characteristics become turbid. The specific characteristics become turbid is called the characteristic of naming, because there are form, sound, smell, taste, and mental objects. Afterward, for each phenomenon, there arises a kind of grasping at specific characteristics in a turbid way. There is also a kind of conceptual grasping. At the same time, there is this grasping at specific characteristics. In Buddhist logic, we say that specific characteristics and general characteristics are confused into one, becoming conceptual thought. Here, turbid means, for example, the specific characteristic of a pillar. It is truly grasped as real through conceptual thought. This is called the characteristic of naming, the 4th one. Then afterward, from this arises the defilement of weariness and afflictions. This is generally called the characteristic of karma, creating karma. The meaning is, because there are these external characteristics, weariness, grasping, afflictions, from this what arises? Defilement of weariness and afflictions. That is to say, one creates all kinds of karma. Then the various sufferings of samsara manifest, suffering and afflictions. So what is this called? The above describes the 5 coarse characteristics. The 5 characteristics. What is the last one? What is the last characteristic? I do not remember very clearly. For the 6 coarse characteristics, there should be 1 more. Perhaps you can look it up later. Finally, arising as the world, stillness becomes space. Space is sameness. The world is difference. That is without sameness or difference. What follows should be the characteristic of being bound by karma and suffering, truly conditioned phenomena. So with this, as just described, it arises and manifests as the world. This world consists of various appearances. Here the world includes both the outer world and the world of sentient beings. Then, if the outer world and the world of sentient beings become still, if they become empty, if the essence becomes still, then they become space. Here, if space is also a manifestation, the manifestation in our conventional world is a world that encompasses everything. If you gather it all together and bring it to stillness, then it is like space without any obstruction. Space is sameness. Regarding sameness and difference here, actually, space is sameness. Space in the east, south, west, and north. Space everywhere is the same. The space in Africa and the space in Asia are the same. The space inside our mouth and the space inside someone else's mouth can also be said to be the same. As long as it is space, emptiness is the same, then the world is different. As long as it is the outer world and the world of sentient beings, the world of beings, then the world world is certainly not the same. On the surface, they may seem alike. For example, two people may look very similar, but if you look closely, perhaps the nose is bigger or smaller, the eyes are bigger or smaller, they are still not the same, so they are different. So in this way, that is without sameness or difference. Once you reach the point where there is neither sameness nor difference, because sameness and difference are characteristics of two extremes. One is sameness, which can also be said to be a relatively still state, and the other is difference, a relatively fluctuating state. In the essence of these two, there is certainly no difference. They should all be, from the perspective of Madhyamaka, free from the four extremes and the 8 elaborations. This is called truly conditioned phenomena. Actually, truly conditioned phenomena are also the essence of unconditioned phenomena. So these principles actually, in some commentaries, in the awakening of faith in the Mahayana, especially the 6 course characteristics, are discussed extensively. For each characteristic, it is explained using each statement from the awakening of faith. This is also acceptable. Or, as long as we give rise to some characteristics, various phenomena arise. If there are no characteristics, these phenomena would not arise. For example, the patriarch Ashvaghosha said, "If the mind arises, all phenomena arise. If the mind arises, all phenomena arise. If the mind does not arise, phenomena have nothing from which to arise. If the mind does not arise, phenomena have nothing from which to arise." So as long as all phenomena arise, various appearances arise. But these various appearances are actually one with space. Their essence is non-dual and inseparable from emptiness and luminosity. So this principle, together with what we discussed earlier, that all phenomena are within the essence of Tathagata Garbha, is actually neither separate nor united. From this perspective, we should understand Venerable Purna Maitreyan Putra too. Perhaps now he is bewildered. He does not know what question he asked or what the Buddha answered. But if you carefully examine the meaning within, the principles within are answered one by one, either directly or indirectly. Today's teaching ends here.
Sonandai Tanche Rukanya Tonani Dejana Basi Jirgana Jirano Chukai Chupun Sonen Droa Droa Sho
Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye Bandangara Badma Sodargye